And we're spending another week in Dolan's Dugout with your host, Steve Dolan. I'm Ramon Scott, and we're heading close to the start of the baseball regular season. But, Steve, in the preps, we're already well underway with some dramatic results early on.
Yeah, definitely. As you know, the most dramatic from an East County standpoint, after he did our top 10 poll this weekend, of course, as you know, Helix beating Eastlake yesterday, that was huge news.
Yeah, and Eastlake got all of the 14 first-place votes when the poll came out on Monday morning before that game, because Eastlake is Eastlake, and they were off to a 6-0 start. And Helix was still third in the most recent poll that came out on Tuesday, if you will. In the paper anyway, we knew about the results. Helix was third at 3-2, but East County had some other notables in the top 10, mainly Grossmont, and the big surprise so far, maybe the entire county, Santana.
Yeah, that was such a surprise. I mean, Santana wasn't even thought of in the preseason poll of the Union Tribune. But, I mean, going what they did last week, they've beaten several ranked teams already. So, the Sultans are looking hot so far.
Yeah, and I certainly had them right up there as well. In fact, that's kind of how my poll went, at least for the East County teams. I had Eastlake number 1, Torrey Pines 2, Rancho Bernardo 3, Helix 4, Grossmont 5, Santana 6, Cathedral 7th, San Marcos 8th, La Costa Canyon 9th, Point Loma 10th. I'll mention that I did have St. Augustine 11th in my poll. I was kind of teetering back and forth as to which teams to go to there, but the poll ended up a little different. Eastlake 1, Torrey Pines 2, Helix 3, RB 4, then Grossmont, Santana, Cathedral, San Marcos, Bonita Vista, and La Costa Canyon. Well, how did you see it?
Well, actually, Ramon, the way I saw it pretty much the same way you did. I mean, I went with Eastlake number 1, Torrey Pines number 2. I actually had Helix 3, Rancho Bernardo 4th, Grossmont 5th, Santana 6th, Cathedral 7th, Bonita Vista 8th, Point Loma 9th, and Carlsbad 10th. Now, as you know, the early polls are the hardest ones. I mean, you don't have a whole lot to go on, but so far, so good. I think you and I both, the way we voted was pretty close to the way the actual vote came out.
Yeah, and like I said, the big story so far has been the Santana Sultans. They might have actually deserved to be higher than the other two Grossmont Conference teams based on these results. They beat Cathedral Catholic twice so far this season. And, of course, Helix and Grossmont have had a slip-up or two. But since Santana kind of came into the season unranked and dating back to last season, as well as the Sultans have fared of late, they were still kind of behind Grossmont and Helix. So I think that's why I had Santana after that. But no doubt, so far, the Sultans have been a big, big story, and we're going to have Tyler Glowacki, I hope and I believe, on a show tonight right here on East County Sports with Dave Dickens to talk about Santana's great start. Of course, yesterday, Santana, they won again, 7-1 against, perennial stalwart Madison. So Granite Hills lost yesterday, and so did Grossmont. So you can see how things are kind of shaping out. It's kind of like Helix, Santana, Grossmont, Granite, I don't know.
Yeah, not to forget Granite. I mean, I know they were in the others in the voting. Moni, if I could, what's interesting, when I think of Santana baseball, because they started unranked, it's harder to climb up. Think of San Diego State basketball. I mean, back in early December, I believe it was December 8th, Aztecs barely escaped against a bad San Jose State team, and that was the first time they got ranked at all. And then they just kept winning, and as you know, they got now they're 6th, but they've been as high as 4th. So that's the way polls go. And wanted to talk about the Aztecs in a little bit, but also wanted to talk about, now that we're on the topic of baseball, something I found interesting in baseball, and you saw it too, is that with the whole coronavirus, that now the clubhouse is only open to quote essential personnel, which means no media in there. And I mean, I get it. Although I thought Bryce Miller of the San Diego Union Tribune had a great column today where he said, okay, they're doing all they can to protect the players, but what about the fans? And hopefully that comes next.
Well, that's the big question in the room right now. And hey, this is as big of a pandemic health scare maybe as we've had in our lives, and it's nothing that you want to just blow off. You see a major conference such as the Ivy League basketball league cancel their postseason tournament. So these are unprecedented steps. All four major leagues that are playing right now, I believe, had a joint press release in regards to approaches that they're going to take for the sake of the public's health and I guess their own as well. And these are just steps that everyone has to take. And also they have to take a public stance to avoid getting critiqued or panned, if you will, by the public for not doing the right thing. So moving forward over the next couple of weeks, hopefully, just a couple of weeks, Steve, it's just going to be how we proceed and how many of our great sporting events are going to be affected. I mean, I'm not to downplay it, but that's the bottom line for me. And when you see things like this where leagues are taking steps and the games are being affected, well, then you just can't not talk about it anymore.
Oh, yeah. And Ramon, I know the old saying, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. On the other hand, are we overreacting? I don't know. There's an old saying people say at the end of the day, and to me, the saying now is at the end of the year, what will the coronavirus be like? I mean, because right now, a lot more people have been affected by the flu. And frankly, I'll give you a good example. As you know, back in October, my wife and I went to Greece and Italy on a cruise. Well, when we came home, it was an hour bus ride from the port terminal to the airport, 9.5 hours from Rome to JFK in New York, 5.5 hours from there to San Diego. And everybody, virtually, it seemed like on the bus and on the planes, was coughing. And when we got home, I mean, my wife was sick for 2 weeks with a bad cough and flu and all because of that. So really, I mean, will the coronavirus turn out to be any worse than the actual flu? I don't know yet. I mean, right now, obviously, the numbers are running ahead in the flu. And I mean, I don't know that we take enough precautions for the flu because obviously it's a story that I think right now is being neglected because of the coronavirus. But I get it. I get it on the coronavirus. I mean, are people overreacting? I mean, I have my opinion, but I don't want to give it because if I do, I'm sure a lot of people will come down on me. But let's just see where it goes. I mean, let's just see, because as you know, most people right now that are dying because of the coronavirus, and as you know, one death is one too many. Most of them are elderly and or have pre-existing conditions. So let's see where this thing goes. I mean, at this point, I think it's a little bit early to say exactly what the ultimate result is going to be. But as you see with the stock market and things like that, obviously it's had a big effect. But right now, I'd be one to say, let's be cautious and let's see, like I said, not at the end of the day, but at the end of the year or the end of the month, where this thing is.
Well, look, maybe this particular strain of flu has a higher death rate than the average strain of flu. So that's the statistics right now. And if that's the case, then this is just going to continue to happen every couple of years because there's always I don't buy into the fact that the flu strains only run in presidential year cycles, but certainly every couple of years you get a bad strain of the flu, kills a few more people than usual. We all want to take precautions and stay away from each other for a while. Well, that's just going to happen. But let's not interrupt our sporting events, Steve. We don't want to be watching March Madness in a bunch of television studios of empty arenas.
Yeah, because Moni, I know, as you know, I'll be doing stats again this year for Fox Sports San Diego on all the San Diego Padre home games. And I thought about that. What would it be like to be at a baseball game with nobody there? I remember years ago when I used to cover spring training it would be interesting because you have your big games that are on TV and on the big field and all that, but you also have these games called B games that they play on the backfield where virtually nobody's there. And a lot of times those B games can decide who does or doesn't make the team because, again, they're out of sight, out of mind, but certainly the manager and the coaches and all are watching. And it's funny because even when we talk about the flu, think about how the Padres basically kept Fernando Tatis Jr. away from everybody for more than a week, and he just now started playing for the first time in 10 days. So I think, like I say, you got to be careful with the coronavirus, but you have to be careful with the virus too, the flu.
Yeah, and the other, we're talking about the Padres, we're talking about Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball has, I believe, taken some steps today to cancel some mid-season meetings because of coronavirus. And breaking just now, Steve, the San Diego Opera has canceled performances over the coronavirus concerns, and that news just came out within the last couple of minutes. But moving forward, we're at spring training, Steve. The team is kind of scuffling through a little bit after their red-hot start, and it was to be expected. I mean, no team's going to go through spring training and win many more than 20 ball games. So are we just seeing a regression to the means for this club moving forward? We know that there's more cuts coming ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ramon, because actually, I can be honest with you, I'm kind of happy that the Padres are losing a few games because I always say you don't want to go 20-8 in spring training because then maybe when the season starts, you're due for a losing streak. Like I said before, I remember the time when Ozzie Smith batted .450 in spring training for the Padres and started the season 0 for 32. I've always said the perfect spring is to go 500 because then, that's just, it's not like you won a bunch of games that didn't count, but if you go 6-20, you start asking, how good is this team? So it's okay what's happening now. And as you know, in spring training, most of the games, especially early on, are decided by guys who aren't going to be on the team anyway. Once you get past the fourth, fifth inning, it's pretty much guys who are going to be in the minor leagues. But, as spring goes on, you're going to see more of the regulars. You're going to see more of Hosmer and Machado and Tatis and Tommy Pham, hopefully, things like that. I thought it was interesting, Ramon. Speaking of Tommy Pham, I was watching MLB Network. As you know, they do the 30 clubs in 30 days. Yesterday on Monday, they did the San Diego Padres. And interesting thing about Tommy Pham coming over from Tampa Bay, he used to be in St. Louis. Tommy Pham has never played on a team that has had a worse record than 86 wins and 76 losses. So maybe the Tommy Pham factor will give the Padres 86 wins this year. I don't know, but let's see.
Just look how really the Tampa Bay franchise keeps above float, in that playing in that stadium, in that league. It's almost like a place where the Yankees and Red Sox get away. They set up that team for the Red Sox and Yankees to rack up a bunch of wins every year. And you know what? Tampa Bay said the heck with it. And they've actually had a great, great program down there now for a number of years, the one the Padres could emulate if they could, and that would be very, very successful. Tampa Bay's been a nice franchise. So I just think I'm ready for the season to start. But if you talk to Joe Fan on the street, I don't think they knew the Padres blew through the first 2 weeks of their preseason schedule with such a hot record. I don't think it's resulted in an increase in ticket sales so far. That's going to be determined once they get to the regular season. But you know what, Steve? I think the important thing for the Padres is, unlike a lot of these marquee teams and World Series favorites, they haven't suffered any major catastrophic injuries.
That's true. I mean, like, for instance, yesterday you saw where Justin Verlander may not be able to pitch opening day for the Houston Astros. I mean, you've had things like that going on. So, I mean, like you say, the Padres have pretty much escaped anything so far this spring, knock on wood. And it'll just be interesting, Ron, to see where we go from here. Because as you know, the big position battles, catchers are going to be Austin Hedges or Francisco Mejia, or will one of them even get traded and then Luis Torrens becomes a backup to the other guy? Don't know. I mean, and second base, you really have, you got Jurgensen Profar and Brian Dozier there, but also East County's Greg Garcia out of Valhalla High School. I think Greg's going to start a lot because most pitchers, of course, most people are right-handed. You're going to see a lot of right-handers, and Greg being left-handed, hits right-handers pretty well, which is more than Dozier or Profar do. And, San Diego State's Ty France could also figure in at second base. And I think, the center field question, I think that's Trent Grisham. And the other big question is the final guy in the bullpen. I kind of think that's going to have to be Javi Guerra, a converted shortstop to pitcher, because as you know, he's out of options. All those times when he was a shortstop and got sent down to the minor leagues, that counted against him. I always question when a guy makes that position change from a position player to a pitcher. Is he going to be the next Kenley Jansen with the Dodgers, who it's turned out great for him, or is he going to be the next Christian Bethancourt, who caught for the Padres and looked great pitching ninth innings of blowouts, but then with opening day a few years ago he comes in and just got bamboozled by the Dodgers, and you never heard of him since. So those are the interesting questions left in spring training, and of course from there, how many games are the Padres going to win this year?
Yeah. And that total has been holding steady, so I don't think there's been any change in the Padres' prospects. Certainly a little bit higher than what I'm expecting, but my hopes are higher than that win total, certainly with the talent that they're going to put on the field and the depth that the Padres are going to put on the field. Maybe as deep as the other two top contenders, that just the Padres aren't as top heavy, I think, as those top two teams in the NL West. And I think that's where they'll have to prove to be contentious this season.
Yeah, exactly, Ramon. I totally agree with you. And, speaking of winning teams, when we talk about win totals over and under, how about San Diego State now? As you know, with Saturday's loss to Utah State, both Joe Lunardi and Jerry Palm, the quote experts on bracketology, both have the Aztecs as the number 2 seed now. And I think we all know deep down the Aztecs did not want to lose to Utah State. That being said, they lost to Utah State, and if they are a number 2 seed in the West, much better chance of advancing than as a number 1 seed in the East, where if the games are not played in empty arenas, the fans are there. Obviously, the Aztecs could be, number 1 seed in the East and have the other team have 10 times as many fans as them there. So, I mean, the nice thing about being in the West, most likely you play in Sacramento, and if you win 2 games, then you play at the Staples Center in LA. So certainly, all your games are going to be in California till if you can get to the Final Four. So maybe losing last Saturday was the Aztecs' advantage, and we'll also see another advantage or disadvantage. They've never had this before, is they're going to have 13 days off from the Mountain West Championship game to their first NCAA tournament game on March 20th on a Friday, and the question becomes, is that good or bad? I mean, maybe bad that you get rusty, but maybe good that you get your legs back. You're not going to be so tired. And as you know, this weekend, maybe Jamal Franklin and Trey Kell and some other former Aztecs will come out and scrimmage against this team, so it doesn't get too rusty.
Yeah, I mean, they had expectations, I think, to win that conference tournament, even if they do in the back of their mind that maybe they'd feel the comfort of the number 2 seed. I think it's fair and safe to say that Dayton has moved ahead of San Diego State, kind of representing that mid-major. We know Gonzaga, they're technically a mid-major, but they're not. They're a major team.
Yeah.
So their spot, in the top of the rankings is warranted. But I think Dayton has kind of supplanted San Diego State as that mid-major representative. Obi Toppin, National Player of the Year candidate, just as our Malachi Flynn is as well. So wouldn't it be awesome if the Bulldogs and their great fans and the Aztecs and their great fans could meet in a showdown to decide a berth in the Final Four?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm with you. Wouldn't it be funny, though? I mean, if Dayton, Gonzaga, and San Diego State all made the Final Four, I don't see it happening, but it'd be funny if all the, quote, mid-majors got there as opposed to the, major majors.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like you said, having to get those 13 days off, the reason that, that tournament was moved a week up was because of a major convention being held this week in Las Vegas. Well, I guess it wasn't enough for the Pac-12 to move their tournament, nor the Western Athletic Conference, who's competing at the Orleans Arena. So that was just the choice of the conference, reportedly, that they moved it a week up because of the massive ConAg convention that comes into Las Vegas this week, bringing 125,000 visitors. And quite frankly, the rooms go up, the travel goes up. they did it to save money and to save costs. The Mountain West Conference did, reportedly. So they're going to have those 13 days off to seethe. And you know what, Steve, I'm not saying I'm glad Utah State won, but I'm glad they're going to be in the NCAA tournament because I want to see a player like Sam Merrill compete in the NCAA tournament. Hats off to him. Look, there's nothing the Aztecs could do. I mean, I guess they could have played better defense against him, but boy, his shot was on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, KJ Fagan was right in his face. I mean, as you know, even though he did not get Defensive Player of the Year in the conference and Malachi Flynn, his teammate, did, KJ Fagan is the best defensive player in the Mountain West Conference. And he was right there on Merrill, and Merrill just made an unbelievable shot. He had an unbelievable week. All 3 games, he was scoring in the high 20s to lead Utah State to that Mountain West Tournament championship. And, I mean, good for Utah State because, you know, they were one of those who was kind of on the bubble of last 4 in, first 4 out. And even if you're on that last 4 in, a lot of times you're not going to make it because you're going to have conferences like with the Mountain West, where San Diego State might have been the only team, but Utah State becomes an automatic qualifier. And let's say if Dayton were not to win their conference tournament, then that brings in another team that wasn't going to be in there. So again, the bad thing about the last 4 in, first 4 out right now is it's not factoring in a lot of conferences where, again, teams that maybe finish 6th or 7th are going to get instead of that first place team that's going to get in anyway. So those numbers are going to change a lot between now and Sunday. And as you know, the Selection Sunday show will be obviously Sunday at 3 o'clock on CBS TV. And for those who still watch TV as opposed to however else you do it, it's on Channel 8 Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself streaming more than I watch TV anymore, and I don't know if I'm, you know, where's my TV? Where's my television gone? Watching sports has become such a mobile event sometimes now, and you know, that's how I seem to keep up sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And Ramon, it's interesting when you talk about TV versus the internet or however, to transition to another San Diego team. As you know, we have the San Diego Seals Major League Lacrosse team, which all their games are on BR Live, on Bleacher Report Live, and a lot of them are carried locally by Fox 5 San Diego. I mean, for instance, Tabitha Lipkin, who does their weekend sports, she's like the sideline when they're there. So it's interesting that this catching fire, I believe they won like 5 out of 6 now. They're at 500. And what's happened, Austin Stotts, who's their best player, he was out with a knee injury from last year, and ever since he's come back, that team has gone from being pretty bad to pretty darn good. I mean, I worked the game last Saturday for BR Live when the Seals beat Rochester, an expansion team, 19-6. And I mean, oh my gosh, the Seals were just so dominating. Ramon, as you know, one thing, their attendance maybe isn't what they wanted to be so far, but one thing they did at the arena on the upper level, they had the curtains that blocked off about 3/4 of the upper level. So just having people in a more confined space made it a lot louder in there, and they did have a pretty darn good crowd for Star Wars night too. So I think the Seals, everything's pointing up for them now.
Yeah, you know, right now this is a team that made the playoffs last year, and they've got their record back to 500. I just wanted to have you cover them since, you know, you cover all their games. You're right there as the television statistician, just as you are with the Padres. Folks, the reason we have Steve here as our expert on San Diego sports, I mean, when you're talking about the Padre game, you got a 3-man booth, right? You got Don, you've got Mud, and you've got Steve, or whoever else is in there broadcasting. You always have Steve. So we asked Steve's expertise on the Seals. But Steve, yeah, the Seals are making quite a run. I just wanted to, you know, call out the fans a little bit. I mean, this is a team that has next to last in the league in attendance, but certainly have a pretty good squad that's going to compete for a playoff spot in NLL right now, given that they have a 3-3 record. They also are going to play several more games at home, and I think that they can squeak into the playoffs and kind of avenge that loss they had in a great game last year, if you remember, against, I believe, Calgary, 11-10. So I think they can make the playoffs. I'm just concerned right now that the fans, I said 3-3. They're 3-3 at home. They're 6-6.
6-6 overall, yeah.
But, they've already played their 2 games against second place Colorado Mammoth, and Saskatchewan's kind of running away with the division, but they are ahead of Calgary, who they lost to in that playoff game last year. So I want people to get out there and support the Seals. I think they're worthy of it. I think this is a big league where, hey, these other clubs, Steve, around the country, other than New York, which is just a crummy team, they have 1 win, but
Yeah.
almost every other team in the league averages 6,000 or more fans, and most of them average close to 8,000, while San Diego is averaging under 5,000 fans per game, and that shouldn't be the case in really what is the highest caliber league. Are you with me, brother?
Yeah, I am. I faded out there for a second, but yeah, Ramon, what I was going to say is with the Seals, their next home game is Friday, March 20th at 7 o'clock at Pechanga Arena, or as many of us know it as the Sports Arena. But the thing about now is that the Seals obviously are in a playoff run, trying to get those wins. I mean, they have 3 more home games. They got that one, and then they have one on Saturday, April 4th, and Saturday, April 25th. The thing about lacrosse, Ramon, I gotta be honest with you. Before I started doing stats for Bleacher Report Live in Fox 5 San Diego last year, I'd never seen the game, and man, watching that game, it's a very interesting game, very fast paced and all, and those, the old story that you don't necessarily want to see fights, but when people go, that's exciting to them. I mean, I hadn't hardly seen a lacrosse fight at all, and then 2 games ago there was a fight with the Seals, and last game they had 2 fights in the game against Rochester. So if you like seeing that stuff too, the extra stuff, it's kind of like you go to a lacrosse game and a hockey game may break out. So they're worth watching. They're fun. I mean, they're fast paced, they're exciting. So I'm not their PR guy, but I mean, I would advise it if you want to see something, different, exciting, and they have cheap prices for tickets and souvenirs and beer and all that stuff. Go.
Yeah, and the reason why lacrosse excels so much, I think it's bubble from within. It's a very popular sport, especially back east, and there are some good programs out here out west, and certainly the league I think is caught on, and with their ownership group, they're going to be around for quite a while. Okay, Steve, I just wanted to mention another local team, and I want to mention the San Diego Kings.
Yeah.
American Basketball Association Club, they're going to be hosting the Far West Regional Playoff Tournament Saturday and Sunday at El Cajon Valley High. This is the big tournament of the year for the teams out here out west. This winner of the tournament will decide which team from this region is going to be moving on to the ABA National Finals, a tournament that our San Diego Kings, which play their home games at El Cajon Valley High School, their games they played last year in that national tournament, making it all the way to the championship game where they lost. So they might not be as good this year as they were last year. Their record shows that they might be just a notch below. They just had a tune-up in Tijuana and lost to the Tijuana Piranhas of all teams. They only took 6 players down to Tijuana, and the owner, the great El Cajon Valley High star who owns the team and is the general manager of the club, he actually had to suit up for the game to give them 6 players to take on the Piranhas. So they didn't have their full team down there. On Saturday and Sunday, Steve, the San Diego Kings will take on the San Diego Surf on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. at El Cajon. So Abraham, you, Cajon Valley High. They'll be come back.
No problema. Good morning. Are you still there? Can you hear me? Okay.